Well, we're out here today at Verdie Cemetery. Now, Verdie Cemetery is another one that's here in Nassau County, and my great grandfather, Jess T. Green, is buried out here. There's a little thing here that was put up by the Boy Scouts that references all of the veterans here in Verdie Cemetery. And Jess T. Green Jr. is on the sign there. Now, Jess T. Green was born once again up in Traders Hill, Georgia. That is a focal point in my family history. A lot of them come from that area up there. And seems to me like there's about 400 or 500 graves out here in this cemetery, and I've got some distant relatives that are buried out here, but Jess T. and his wife Roseanne are my great-grandparents. Now, Jess was born in 1845, and their family was a big family, the Greens, very big family. Part of them went farther west in Florida, over around Bradford County. In fact, Jess Green Jr.'s dad, Jess Sr., is buried over actually in Evergreen Cemetery by Florida State Prison over there. Now, they're in unmarked graves over there, him and his second wife. His first wife died young, and then he married, ironically, her sister, who was a little bit younger, but they're both over in unmarked graves over in Evergreen, so I have no way of knowing exactly where they're at over there. Now, part of this cemetery has some older graves in it. There's a newer one back towards the back, but this cemetery is pretty much filled up. There's not a whole lot of space here. It's a private cemetery. Not open for public burials. Now, like I say, Jess was born up in Georgia, and at a young age, the war between the states broke out. He was 16 years old, and he and three of his brothers joined the 4th Georgia Cavalry under E.D. Tracy and Duncan Clinch. We went to Fort Clinch yesterday, and this is my tie-in to Fort Clinch, you might say. Now, this is Jess T. Green, Roseanne Alexander. Now, they have the military style headstones put in by the government. You can tell Confederate veterans, of course, by the point at the top of the stone. U.S. military have the rounded top. Now, Jess T. Green, Company D, 4th Regiment, Georgia Cavalry, CSA, March 26, 1845 to October 1914. And his wife was Roseanne Alexander, October 6, 1942 to February 2nd of 1919. Now, Jess and his brothers were in the cavalry unit, and they were horsemen. They grew up with horses, and Jess in his youth, my understanding is, was a small, slender, wiry kind of feller, and he was a excellent horseman. And they fought in a lot of bloody battles. The 4th Georgia originally was the Atlantic Coastal Guards, and basically their job originally was to protect the home area and watch out for the citizens at home, as opposed to joining the bigger regiments and actually going farther north. But they did fall under the Army of Northern Virginia, and he fought in the Battle of Olustee, if you were U.S., or the Battle of Ocean Pond, if you were Confederate. And he told his daughters, when he was talking to them, that it was the bloodiest fight that he had ever seen. Now, when you talk about the Battle of Ocean Pond or Olustee, it don't show up on the history map, so to speak. It's kind of one of them non-important battles. It was one of the few major battles here in this part of the country, and like I say, he said it was one of the bloodiest ever. Now, he met Roseanne Alexander. Roseanne Alexander come to live with them. Now, she was 3 years older, 2.5, 3 years older than Jess. And I'm not quite sure what happened to her family. I know who they are, and I do have some genealogy on the Alexander family, but I'm not sure what happened to them. But anyway, she come to live with the Greens in their household. She's actually in the 1850 or 1860 census as living in their household. Now, whether her parents had died and they took her in, or whether she worked for them, I don't know, but she did live with them. That's how they met, and eventually they got married. Now, Jess is not only my great-great-great-grandfather, he is my uncle and my cousin. Their daughter married Styles Americas Rowell. They're buried, him and his wife, Maddie Green. They were buried up in Jones Cemetery, up outside of Callahan, along with his mother, Jane Howard Rowell, who was married to David Rowell, which we seen in the Emmaus video. But anyway, they fell in love. They got married. And after the war between the states, they all come back and a lot of them went their different ways. Now, one of his brothers was killed in battle. 3 of the 4 did come back alive. 3 of the 4 did come back alive from that horrible war. And he settled actually not far from here. Now, some of the other brothers went over Bradford County, but he stayed over here. In fact, when he filed for a pension in 1900, he was living right here in Verdie. Now, every family has stories. Well, the one that I have always heard about Jess Green and his brothers, there was actually an uncle that fought with him. His uncle actually was in the 4th Georgia as well. Now, there's a story about Yankee gold. I guess every family has similar stories, but there are things that lead me to believe that maybe the story could be partially true, that they somehow intercepted a Yankee payroll and took the gold. And part of the story was that Jess, being the younger of the bunch, rode home, took a unauthorized leave of absence for a few days, and he's the one that actually carried the gold back to the old Green homestead up there near Green Cemetery. Now, the Greens weren't a rich family. They were farmers. They got along. But they never really wanted for anything. But I've always heard that story where there was Yankee gold that had been confiscated, and he had brought some of it back and left it with his uncle Richard, that's buried up in Green Cemetery, who originally had the homestead up there, because his dad, Jess Sr., was fighting in the war, and he went in another direction. He wasn't in the 4th Georgia. But anyway, my grandma always used to tell that story. Now, I always took it as half fact, so to speak. till when my grandmother passed away back in 1991. Her brother was in a nursing home over on the west side, and me and my brother and my nephew went over and got Uncle JD, and we brought him to the funeral, and we had a dinner afterwards and all like that. Well, we had a long talk with Uncle JD, and we asked him about the validity of the gold. And he said, yes, it was a true story. And he said, in fact, they hid the gold when he brought it back. I don't know why they would have hidden it, but they had an old log barn at the old home place, and he said they took an auger and took that auger with a big bit and augered a hole into the end of the log. He said they put the gold in that augered out hole and then whittled out a stick, plugged the hole with the stick, and then cut it off flush with the butt end of the log. And he said that's how they hid the gold. And maybe they was worried about retribution from the Northern Army or tracing it some kind of way. I don't know. But he said he knew that for a fact. So he's one that would have probably known one way or the other. He knew everybody. And so it was a story that he knew firsthand. So I almost want to take it at truth that maybe it was true. Who knows? It's just one of them stories of many stories that I hear with my family. But anyway, he's another one of the Green boys. Like I say, there was a bunch of them, and there's a lot of stories about all of them. And I like to share them. Some people like to hear them, some people don't. But a lot of my family probably haven't even heard some of these stories. I heard them all listening to my grandparents, great-grandparents. But like I say, it's really peaceful out here today. And all the cemeteries that I go to, none of them are prominent cemeteries. They're all out of the way and tucked around in the woods, where at one time this would have been about as far out in the woods as you could get, but civilization is encroaching quickly. Now, these cedar trees out here, some of these cedar trees are pretty big. Now, cedar trees don't grow very quickly, and buddy, there's some big ones out here that are several hundred years old. Hopefully y'all are getting good shots of these trees. And My family's scattered around all over the place here. And there's a few of them where a lot of them are buried together, and then there's like this one where I've only got the 2 relatives that are buried. So I thought I'd come out here today and take a look around and see what was going on. Now there's a few interesting tombstones out here. We've got our I've got to where I look for more now than I used to. The another woodsman of the world memorial. This one is not the obelisk. This one is the tree trunk. They're very intricate the way they're done. And that memorial, I'm right at 6 foot, and this is as tall as I am. James R. Adams, 1854 to 1909. Now, here's a interesting grave. These are Mamie Porter, and this is Lucinda Green. Now, Lucinda Green is actually sister to James R. I didn't even know that she was buried up here. Someone has put a angel up above her stone. Now, this is W.R. Adams over here. It's got a Confederate stone and marker. W.R. Adams died 1892, and he was 73 years old, so he would have been born around 1820. Somebody put a lot of effort into that stone there. Michael and I can't pronounce that. Leminahja McFadden. Now somebody has taken and poured that out of concrete and etched the names into the concrete. That took a lot of time and love to do that. Now, there's another obelisk there, Henry Brandeis. There's Elizabeth Ballins, born Yorkshire, England, 1836, and died in Callahan, Florida, 1908. So she was a immigrant to this country. Now, on the other side here, it's got George P. Wells, born Cambridge, England, 1836, died in Callahan, 1917. Now that is very unique. I've never seen one placed exactly like that. Now I'm at the base where their feet would have been when they were buried, and this obelisk is turned at a 45-degree angle, splitting the 2 graves, and instead of a double stone, they've got a single stone that's an obelisk. Very ingenious and very unique. I've been to a lot of graveyards and I have never seen anything quite like that. But those are, I've seen another one. See if I can find it again that was a little bit unique. So there's a lot of unmarked graves out here. It's a shame that people don't have markers. I know I've got several kin people that they don't have markers, and for one reason or another. You really don't know where they're buried at in the cemetery. You assume you know where they're buried at, but you don't know. But I guess the overall scheme of things, it don't matter. As long as, like I said, as long as people are remembered and talked about, they live on and on. Now, this is the one I seen a minute ago. So, nice little marker. It's older style from the 20s. Jenny V., daughter of Mr. and Mrs. J.O. Whittemore, 1915 to 1921. So she'd have been 6 years old when she passed away. And there's a small angel looking down on the grave. Now, whether there's small angels or not, I don't know. Angels were created, and so I see no reason why there wouldn't be small angels. Some cruises, some griffins. Well, thought I'd ride up here today and take a look. I'm going to stop by on the way back at Dinsmore Cemetery. My grandparents and great-grandparents are buried there. I haven't been over there in a little while. I always think about them, but I haven't been to the cemetery over there in a while. So I'm going to stop by and film that for a minute. I got a couple little stories about them. Now, they will be the first of the Davis side of the family that I've done. And the reason I haven't done a bunch on the Davis side of the family is there's none of them here. They're all up in Georgia. Here again, I'm going to take a few days and ride up that way, take the van and go up and see some cemeteries that I've never seen before. So anyway, with that, we're going to call this one a day. Appreciate it if you'd like, subscribe, comment, and once again, God bless you and y'all have a great day.